onto the up. I'm like, okay, so where's all this ghostly activity? And I kind of said it with air quotes, so to speak. And she's like, oh, well, you'll see. Right about midnight, a little bit after, I just hear this unearthly moaning, and it starts very low and silent, and then it just goes up into like a wail. And it's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and she's like, so do you want to go down to the basement? And I'm like, why would we go down to the basement? And I'm like, I think that seemed like a scary thing for the night. And she's like, well, you want to see what's in the basement?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net. Scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you guys today. I am joined by Tony from Utah, who is joining us to discuss his incredible experiences with the paranormal. So buckle up, it's going to get spooky. Hey Tony, how you doing? Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Brent. It's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure.
Likewise. I was just telling you before we started recording, it's like, this is literally what I love about doing these shows, is talking to people who have had experiences and who've encountered things that are just beyond explanation. And so it really means a lot that so many people like yourself are willing to come forward and talk about these things. So, it is, a brave thing to do as well, to just get out there and say, here's my story. So it really means a lot to me, brother.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, for me, it is. I mean, this is the first time I've actually spoken publicly about all my experiences I've had. Most of the time I've talked to my family and stuff about it, and they just kind of shrug it off as like, oh, it's just Tony telling the story. So
no, I hear you. It's not for everybody, of course, but I'm glad you're here. And so can you kind of take us back to, where did all this journey basically start for you, Tony?
So I think for me, and this starts way back when. So when I was younger, about the age, I think about 4 or 5 or so. So my dad was going to school. He was actually at Minnesota University, and he was studying to be a psychologist. Just a little backstory there.
Sure.
And so I was a very curious kid, as the children tend to be at those ages.
Right.
And so I woke up one morning early on the Saturday, and there was this green-looking ethereal figure. I don't know what to call it, but it was like green. It looked kind of ethereal, and it looked like a bone just kind of floating in the air. And so I was curious about things. I was kind of curious about ghosts at the time, just your general paranormal curiosity, I guess.
Sure.
And anyhow, I just woke up early and I was looking at it, and I just kind of walked around. I was able to kind of like circumvent it, or like just kind of walk around in a circle around it. I was able just to kind of look at it, and it looked like it was like a chicken bone.
Oh.
Or like some bone just floating in the air. And I thought, this is weird. So I'm like, I'll go get my dad. Well, my dad, of course, doesn't like being woken up on a weekend. I mean, who wants to be woken up on a weekend?
Right.
Right. And so he actually woke up, he came down, and he looked at it with me. And we both kind of looked at it, and he looked at it rather objectively, because he's studying to be a psychologist and getting his PhD in psychology. And he's just looking around, looking at it. He's like, well, could it be like a trick of the light? So we go over and we flip on the light, and of course we can't see it because the light's on. And then we flip it back on, and it's still there. So I don't know if it was a trick of the light, or it was actual like something that was ethereal that phantasmagoric or just, ghost. But it did get me thinking. So I'm not sure if that was a ghostly experience or not, but it did kind of get the juices flowing, so to speak.
Sure. And how big would you describe this as?
Oh, in length, I would say I recall maybe an inch or so.
In length? Oh, okay.
Yeah, in an inch in length, maybe a little bit less.
Okay, so it was
tiny. Yeah, it was tiny and it was round. And in my head, I kept thinking it was like a witch's bone or a chicken bone or something.
Right.
But that's just my childhood brain.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's an unusual thing. Do you think it, as you think back on it, do you think it might have been more of an orb, but it was just looked like the shape of a bone or something along that nature?
It could have been. I mean, I've actually gone back in my memory multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Sometimes before I go to bed, just lying there thinking about things in my younger childhood, and I don't know what that was. I mean, it could have been an orb, but then I don't know if it was a trick of the light or if it was something else. But it did get me thinking. That's for sure.
And how did your dad just basically leave it at that? Like, well, we don't know what it is. Let's go get some breakfast.
Basically, was he wanted to go back to bed, and I just stayed up.
And how long did this thing linger there? This weird object.
It was there until I decided to go back to bed, and then when I woke up later on that day, it was gone. So,
wow, that's an incredibly unusual thing. I mean, I don't think I've heard of someone seeing something like that that was just so peculiar. It seems kind of ambiguous, and yet it was incredible because it shouldn't have been there. But it's just such an oddity, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing I really appreciated was my dad actually came and instead of just brushing me off, he came down and he actually took the time to look at it and at least help me maybe assimilate or create some sort of explanation. But
sure,
for me, there was really no explanation.
Yeah,
so I appreciate that.
Yeah, that is true. I can't tell you how many stories that I've covered and how many people I've talked to who, when they went to talk to the parents, was like, "Oh, it's just your imagination. Go back to bed." Without helping a child process this weird stuff. So that is cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so what happens next?
So next, my dad, he graduates. He gets his PhD, and then shortly after that, he gets a job in Utah, and so we moved to Utah.
Okay.
And while living in Utah, we lived in this fourplex of apartments because we weren't necessarily ready to get a house yet. Because my dad just barely graduated, and I'm sure there were lots of things involved with like student debt, getting other things taken care of.
Absolutely.
Before we could even look into getting a house. So, what happened next wasn't necessarily a paranormal experience, but it was more like I feel like there are feelings you can get. There are things that kind of guide you in regards to keeping you safe. Mm-hmm. Some people call it a second sight. Other people tend to call it like warnings or like guardian angels.
Sure,
I've heard it referred to as that. Mm-hmm. But so me and a bunch of friends, we were playing in this old empty truck, and it was filled with all sorts of garbage, and there was all sorts of just lots of doodads, lots of old tools, old parts of tools, just sitting in the truck, and we were just messing around doing things that kids do. And then while we were playing in there, I got this distinct impression. Yeah, it was an impression where I felt Tony, you need to get out of there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And so I just sat there just kind of doing my thing. And then it came again. It's like, Tony, you need to get out of there. And so I'm like, okay, it's happened twice, so maybe I ought to do something. So I get out of the truck and do my own thing. Well, as I was getting out, one of my friends slipped on something in the trunk, fell and cut his arm on the circular saw.
Oh, wow.
On the circular saw blade that was there.
Oh.
And so had I not moved, I would have gotten hurt.
Oh, man. And your friend was pretty hurt?
Yeah, he was hurt pretty bad. I think they had to take him in and get him stitches and stuff and all of that. But
wow. So, yeah, someone seems to have looked out for you there, huh?
yeah. So I don't know if it was like a guardian angel or if it was just someone out there just saying, hey, we need to keep an eye on this kid because he's obviously up to no good.
Well, yeah, that's a good story. I think I wish there was more kind of spiritual presences like that helping people out.
Yeah, I agree. And so after that, I really didn't have any more like impressions, you could say, or anything like that until I started into junior high. And now prior to that, I was reading all kinds of books on the paranormal. I was just totally into like just ghosts, vampires, really big into vampires, werewolves, you name it. I read it and I wanted to learn all about it. Aliens, just the whole genre of the paranormal, and also considered the outside or the fringe kind of topics that people don't necessarily talk about, but it's interesting to read. And I got into this. I found this really interesting writer. I don't know if she's kind of a young adult writer. She's English. Her name's Danielle Cohen. Have you heard of her?
No, I'm not familiar with that name.
Yeah, she wrote a lot about just paranormal things. Like she wrote about the hairy hands. Have you heard about that?
No, I don't think I'm familiar with the hairy hands.
So in the hairy hands, it's this one road over in England where it would never, and it only happened during like the late 60s, early 70s, is where this is where people would go driving, and suddenly these hairy hands would appear and then grab their steering wheel and then cause them to crash. Now, I don't know if it's been debunked or not, but just a story I remember reading.
Yikes! Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the stuff I was reading, and so I would go to the library, and I loved the library. The library was like my best friend, and so in just being at the library, I ended up running into like, I guess you could call her like my first childhood crush, so to speak.
Okay.
And we'll just call her Stephanie.
Okay.
Anyhow, so Stephanie and I meet up, and we just start talking, and we just kind of meet up, and we happen to have the same lunch time, so we just end up chatting and chit-chatting and talking and going through kid stuff that you would actually do when you're in junior high. Right. And while I was talking with her, we eventually got onto the subject of like the paranormal. And she's like, well, I said, well, she's like, well, do you believe in ghosts? And I'm like, kind of. And she's like, well, I believe in ghosts. And I'm like, really? And then the conversation proceeded, and we just kept going back and forth. And then she's finally like, well, the reason why I believe in ghosts is that my house is haunted. And at that point, I hadn't really had any experiences with the paranormal, like up close and personal experiences with the paranormal. But I'm like, okay, I'm curious. You piqued my curiosity. And she's like, well, let's find a way for you to have a sleepover at my place. Now, the problem is that we were both like 12 and 13. and And I knew my parents wouldn't go for that at all. I mean, it just wouldn't go over. But she talked to her parents, and her parents were okay if I slept over and stayed over. But I knew my parents would, so we had to kind of be a little bit, how would I put it?
Did Stephanie become Steve in your parents' version?
Well, so my parents really didn't know about Stephanie, and so and they would like to know about my friends before I even did anything of that nature. So I kind of had to be less than truthful on how on how we ended up there. So we got everything arranged, and I was able to get over there, and so we're just sitting there, just kind of watching movies and just kind of hanging out, doing our thing. And her parents were nice enough to make us dinner, and they did all the nice hosting stuff that you would do when you had someone over. But her parents go to bed, and then I'm sitting up. I'm like, okay, so where's all this ghostly activity? And I kind of said it with air quotes, so to speak. And she's like, oh, well, you'll see. And I'm like, I'll see what? And so we're just sitting there. And then right about midnight, a little bit after, I just hear this unearthly moaning.
Oh, jeez.
And it starts very low and silent, and then it just goes up into like a wail. And it just kept, and the sound just kept fluctuating. So it kind of kept going from like a quiet to a low to a high, and then back down, and it just kind of did that, and it did that for quite a while. I'm not sure how long it was, but it was loud and it was noisy, and I just can't help but think that why didn't the parents wake up? Why weren't the parents not waking up and checking on things? But maybe it was something that happened so often that they were used to, or I don't know, maybe, and this is something I've thought about, that maybe that ghosts or paranormal apparitions have the ability to only let those who they want to have things heard by the people they want them to hear.
I would agree wholeheartedly. In fact, I've covered stories where people have been walking in a group, and let's say it's a group of 5 people. 3 of those people will hear a loud scream, and 2 of them are like, what are you talking about? So I agree. There does seem to be a precedent for the fact that, you know, they can choose, or just maybe due to the sensitivity of both of you versus the parents, that you were able to perceive it, but, you know, they weren't. So, yeah, there's merit to what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I concluded on my own. And so this wailing went on for a while at least, and that stopped. And then I'm like, okay, is that it? She's like, oh no, it gets worse. And I'm like, what do you mean worse? And she's like, wait till 3:00. And of course, that is the time that a lot of things tend to happen. I know from a lot of research and whatnot, is that 3:00 tends to be like the witching hour, so to speak.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I'm like, well, what happened at 3:00? She's like, well, let's go down to the kitchen about 3:00 and we'll see what happens. So we go down to the kitchen, and we're just kind of hanging out, just kind of doing our thing, and 3:00 rolls around, and oh my gosh, pots and pans were just banging around, chairs were being moved. Oh, wow. And like knives out of the knife block were being just like flung to the door, because they had a door to their kitchen. It was quite the experience.
Yeah, that's some incredible activity.
And I'm like, Stephanie, I'm not going in that kitchen. She's like, oh no, I don't expect you to. Wow. And so finally, after everything just calms down, and it took a while for everything to calm down, we go in there, and the kitchen's just a mess. Chairs just knocked over. the knives are still in the door. So I'm helping her clean everything up, and we're just kind of getting everything messed up. And she's like, "Yeah, we better clean it up because if my parents come down and see all of this, they're just going to blame me." So I'm guessing something like this has happened before,
Sure.
and so her parents just kind of hold her accountable for it.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that's harsh.
So we get everything cleaned up. And it's about 5:00 in the morning, and she's like, "So, do you want to go down to the basement?" And I'm like, "Why would we go down to the basement?" And I'm like, I think I'd seen my fill of scary things for the night. And she's like, "Well, you want to see what's in the basement?" So she takes me down to the basement, and down in the basement, there's a stone altar that's been built.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, I don't know what it was used for. She doesn't really know what it was used for. But golly, it was, the stone altar. She said that they found like this old book that was right by it. So it could have been used for, I don't know. I hate to say like satanic purposes, but I don't know. I don't want to go there because I don't know. And she didn't know.
Sure.
But yeah, so she thinks that, or she thought, and we kind of both thought that what was happening was based off of that altar and the book she found. And her parents saw the book and really didn't think anything of it, and they just threw it away. So.
Oh, man. Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was like my first really, really big experience. Like, so the paranormal was real. I guess it was a baptism by fire, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, when you went to the basement, you saw this altar, for lack of a better term, and can you describe what that looked like just a little bit so I have an understanding? Because I'm thinking of like two rocks with a rock on top, or is it bricks, or what was it constructed of?
It was made of bricks. It was kind of like a stone tower made of bricks.
Okay.
And then it was moved off with some cement.
Okay.
And there weren't any symbols that were written in it or anything. It was just an altar.
Okay.
Is what she called it.
So you saw this down there. Was there any accompanying activity to that, or was it just the creepy factor of this altar just sitting there in this weird basement?
Well, when you went down into the basement, you got the vibe like you don't want to be down there.
Oh.
And I just got this icky feeling like I don't want to be down there. But we went down there just because, A, to satiate our curiosities, and B, I kind of wanted to know if there was like a reason as to why everything was happening and why things had just gotten so out of control.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's creepy. That's a lot for a young mind to have to suck up, yeah?
That's true. That's true. Now, what's interesting is I would drive past that house for years and years and years, and then one day I just saw it being torn down, and now it's not there anymore, and another house is in its place.
Oh wow! Okay, was it a beat up house back then, or was it? Is this? It
was in pretty decent condition, I would say.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, maybe there were.
Unfortunately, go ahead.
I was thinking maybe there's other reasons, like the kitchen exploding every night at 3 a.m. or whatever. They decided not like that. Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But it was pretty. That was definitely pretty creeptastic. That's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so this house is gone, and where are you going now? Where are you taking us?
So from there, unfortunately, after that incident or that situation, me and Stephanie kind of lost contact. She things got kind of awkward, and so we just kind of went our separate ways. And I haven't really been in contact with her since. I mean, I've actually attempted to I've tried to look her up on Facebook and stuff, but I can't find her. So she was not really being to the social media thing.
Okay, gotcha.
But anyhow, moving along. So right after junior high, of course, you go to high school. And when I started in high school, I started having a lot of deja vu.
Okay.
And so I figured that's kind of interesting, is that a lot of things that I would realize that I'd done in class, I also went back and realized that I had dreamt about it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No, I don't know. And I still have the deja vu to this day, which is kind of interesting. It's not as prevalent as when I was younger, but I still have it from time to time. Like there was about 4 months ago, I was working in my office and I stood up and then I looked a certain direction and I saw a coworker and I'm like, oh yeah, I had a dream about this.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if my deja vu is just meant to say, hey, you still have it, or B, you can use it to, you can. I guess what I want to say is I don't know how to use it effectively, if I can use it effectively.
Okay. Yeah. So it just seems kind of random, and there's nothing that poignant about these events, but you've seen them before in a dream, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'd be nice to be able to dial that in, especially if you could aim it towards lottery numbers. That'd be pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
I'd be sitting pretty.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's pretty cool though. I don't know that. I mean, that's probably a pretty rare thing. I know that I've heard of people having dream premonitions many times, but generally speaking, they seem to be usually geared towards these very powerful events, like the plane crash kind of for foreboding or vision or something of that nature, where it's such a powerful event that it seems to punch through time and come to people in a psychic way. But these are just kind of everyday walk of life events. But still, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, and so those kind of play a part in my life, and then moving along through my high school experience, I got involved in it's kind of like an outset. I got involved in the program. It kind of helped people who are shy, who are kind of maybe not so able to communicate and not necessarily communicate, but it was more of it basically helps shy kids kind of become more comfortable with getting out there, meeting new people, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I got involved with this program, and extracurricularly, they'd have you do things, and then it was kind of based on an honor system where you could accumulate points. So if you got so many points and you did so many things according to their guidelines, you could get pops, or you could get candy, or you could just kind of get little trinkets or doodads, so to speak, that to reward you for participating in the program. Well, one thing I would do was wake up early, and so I would wake up early, make breakfast, and do my thing. Well, one morning I woke up early, and I had my breakfast. It was my oatmeal that I would usually make, and I sat down at the table, and I was wide awake. I was completely wide awake. I was not asleep. I was not fainting in and out of, fainting in and out of just sleepiness or anything. But I saw my bowl of oatmeal move all by itself on the table, and it had to move at least a foot. But it just moved across the table.
Wow.
And I'm just looking at it like, whoa, what's going on here? Right. And not only did that send a jolt of adrenaline through me, but it also woke me up as well, even more. Right. And I'm like, what's going on here? Until I pick up the bowl, I look under, and I look around it. There's nothing there. There was nothing there. The table was even. I even measured the table. Later on that day, I come home, I'm like, something must have happened. There must have been a table, or there must have been an earthquake or something. And and unfortunately, fortunately, Utah hasn't had an earthquake, at least until it was in 2020 we had our first pretty big earthquake.
Wow.
That a lot of people felt, but
Okay.
no earthquake, nothing like that. But the bowl of oatmeal moved, and that was pretty.
That is exciting, and here's the thing, and this is why I love talking to people, because we're kind of conditioned for the paranormal to be like poltergeist, where there's furniture flying and stuff like this. But I've always said that, even if it's just a small thing, like your cereal bowl moves, that's incredible, because they're not supposed to move on their own. They're, that's not supposed to happen. So that's a huge, huge event.
Yeah. And so I woke up and I went up to see my parents were awake, and my dad was still sleeping, and so I'm like, I don't want to bother them. But
Sure.
that was, for me, that was really profound. That was really profound, because I'm like, and then of course that just threw me back into the whole experience I had with Stephanie.
Right.
And I'm like, is something following me? Is something attached to me?
Sure.
But I really didn't feel like anything was attached to me. I didn't really feel like, because I feel like a lot of these things are vibrational, and so I've done my best to kind of keep my vibrations at a higher level, so that way something won't attach to me.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's marvelous.
So just kind of thinking on that aspect is just kind of keeping my vibrations, and so that experience, although scary, was really, really profound for me, I think.
So
I feel
this was kind of just a one-off event, though, right? I mean, it's not like your cereal bowl had moved often, or you'd seen other things moving. It's just out of the blue, this bowl moves.
Yeah. So it was just, we hadn't really had anything else. We hadn't really seen anything else. I know my brothers and sisters, I haven't really talked to I have talked to my brothers and sisters about things like this, but they just kind of shrug it off like, whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely people really grasp pretty desperately onto their paradigms, and when things like this are discussed, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because they just don't want to. They don't want to go there. That's not where they feel safe and secure. So, yeah, I mean, I get that completely, and I don't blame them. It's not a judgment at all. It's just some people are willing to embrace possibilities, and other people are just fine with things the way they know they're to be.
Yeah. And so after that, I graduated, and our family's a rather religious family.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a rather religious community, and so I ended up serving a mission for the church that we belong to, and I went to the Netherlands, which was a really, really interesting place to be, because there was just being 19 years old and then going to like a completely different country was just. That was just out of this world.
Right. Wow.
And so while I was there, I didn't really have any like paranormal experiences, but the deja vu kicked in. And every time I went to a new area or a new place within the country, and even into places into Belgium, the deja vu would let me know that I was going to have a new companion and who they were. I didn't know who they were at the time of the dream, but I knew that I had seen them before, because I could recollect from my memory that I dreamt about it before.
Oh, cool. Wow.
So, I mean, I guess in a way that kind of helped out with, with the deja vu, but it's just a little, I think it's really kind of interesting.
Yeah, it really is. That's a cool thing too, because I guess you're not going to get surprised very often.
Well, I'm genuinely surprised with a lot of things. Hopefully not many, but
that's cool. So how long were you over in the Netherlands?
I was there for a couple of years.
Okay. But other than the premonitions or visions from dreams, there wasn't a whole lot paranormally?
No, nothing that I can recall.
Okay.
I mean, and there may have been, and I was just oblivious to it. So
sure. Yeah.
So it's just, yeah.
Okay.
And so after I get back from the Netherlands, I started working in group homes with people who had disabilities, and I worked for this company, and I'd worked for them for at least about 2 or 3 years at the time, and they said, "Hey, you want to work a night shift?" And I had never worked a night shift before, so I'm like, "Okay, I'll go do this. It's fine by me. I'll go work the night shift." And so I got all my drinks, and I got my Mountain Dews, and I got all my caffeinated beverages to keep me awake, and I started working in that. I started working, and this place that I was working at used to be an old hospital.
Oh, okay.
And so I got the patient all settled in and tucked in, and I started getting things ready because you're supposed to do his laundry. And then after you do his laundry, then you bring it up and you fold it and just kind of do odds and ends around his apartment to kind of keep yourself awake so you're not sleeping, because sleeping is, of course, a no-no.
Sure.
And so I got this guy all settled in. I got him all settled in. I made sure he was fast asleep. And then I collected up his laundry and I went down to the basement. And that's where they had the laundry room. And upon further investigation, I found out that the basement used to be the mortuary.
Oh, okay. Yikes.
And so I found this after the fact. So I go down to the basement, and there's this dark feeling in the basement. It's almost palpable. It's like you could almost like it was on your tongue or something. Like you could taste it.
Sure.
But I didn't want to taste it. And so I'm just walking. I'm just walking to this basement. I'm like, I don't want to be here. But I had to, because I had to go get the laundry started. So I go and got the laundry started and got everything washing and going. And I could just feel this. It was a very heavy presence, very heavy, very dark. Like, oh, I need to get out of here. So I got out of there. I went in, went upstairs, checked on the patient, make sure he was okay. He was still fast asleep. And then I went back down. I went back downstairs, and again, there's that really just heavy feeling. It's really dark. And so the laundry had finished. Moved the laundry over, put it in the dryer, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get out of here. So I got out of there as fast as I could. Waited for about 45 minutes, an hour until I knew the laundry was dry. Went down there, and again, I'm just still in that dark, heavy presence. Like, and I was getting a headache from it. I was like getting physically affected by it. I was just not feeling. I was just not feeling it at all. Yeah. And so I get the laundry out, I grab it, and I drop a rag on the floor, and right as I go to grab the rag just lifts up off the ground, and it gets flung across the room. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right. And then I just said out loud, you know what? You don't want me in here. I don't want to be in here. I'm going to go. And so I grab the rag, grab the rest of the laundry that I dropped, and go back up to the room. And I didn't come back into the basement for the rest of the night.
Yikes. I don't blame you. That's creepy. And I'm not sure what it is about basements, but God, there's some basements where they seem to really collect a lot of energy. But if that used to be a morgue, then, maybe there's a lot of bad energy down there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bad juju, that's for sure.
Wow, that's got to be terrifying.
And after that, I politely asked the manager, the program coordinator, to not have me work night shifts in that facility, because No.
Did you go into specifics, or did you just say, no, I don't like it?
I didn't really want to go into specifics because I didn't feel comfortable.
Sure.
And I didn't want to be called into question.
Yeah.
Because I knew, because I know that would be called into question, especially if you bring up situations like that people are going to question you and they're going to say, oh, well, you're just making up stuff or whatever. And I'm like, no.
Right.
No.
Sure. No, I don't blame you. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't either if I had traded places with you. I was just curious if it was known, if there was a known fact that the basement was creepy after dark with other people there, or was that just your own experience?
Well, that was my own experience, and I really never talked to anybody else who worked with him or worked in that facility or worked with in his apartment. So
okay, gotcha.
Because there were multiple apartments across the way, and some of them had just regular tenants, and others had kind of like low income housing for people with disabilities.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Huh. Very good. So where do we go now, sir?
So after that, I got into CNA work. I went on and realized that I really couldn't do much with what I was doing. So I got into CNA work. I got my CNA license, and oh golly, there are a lot of experiences there. Yeah. Goodness. Let's see. In the first, so I worked at this. I worked at this one place, and it was here locally. I worked there, and I worked all across the floor and stuff. It was just a one floor building. They didn't have like multiple floors or anything. I remember working on, so they had a lockdown unit or our memory care unit, and then they also had their main floor, and so I worked on that quite a bit.
Okay.
And then I ended up getting moved over to the memory care unit, and then on the memory care unit is where I just liked it there. I liked it on the memory care unit, and I liked working with the patients and the residents, and so. Again, I kind of feel like I get suckered into this, but they're like, hey, Tony, do you want to work a night shift?
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I'll work a night shift. Mm-hmm. And so I get all set up and I work a night shift, and I mean, I'd known from working the swing shift that, a lot of people from the day shift didn't really clean up much, and swing shift didn't really clean up much. So I just went around doing my usual thing, cleaning up wheelchairs and just making sure the unit was nice and ready for the next day. Mm-hmm. And so I remember putting away a wheelchair, and I knew I had put it away, but I ended up walking just down the hall, just kind of walking around the hall, just making sure the patients are okay. And I'm walking. So I walk to the end of the hall, and in the back we have like a small little gated courtyard where the patients and residents can go out and just kind of get some fresh air and then go back in, so they don't feel like they're like in jail or anything.
Right.
And I'm walking back towards the entrance of the unit, and I get this weird feeling like I'm being followed.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so I turn around and look, and there's a wheelchair just following me. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And so I thought to myself, well, I could get scared, but I'm like, I don't want to get scared. So I decided I'll walk around in a circle. Maybe I can deter it. I walk around in a circle, and it just follows me tit for tat, just right around in that circle. And that's what kind of scared me crapless.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's all kinds of creepy. Wow.
And so I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. And I made a beeline for the door. I said, you know what? I talked to the charge nurse. I'm like, you put someone else in there. I'm staying out here for the night. Let someone else go in there and figure it out, because I'm not going to figure it out.
Oh, jeez. And they were able to do that. Then they were able to accommodate that.
I made sure that they were able to accommodate it.
Yeah. Being followed by an empty wheelchair, I think, is enough to make anybody want to check out for the night for sure. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, of course I couldn't leave because I didn't want to abandon, and I wanted to keep my job. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, switch me out, and I explained it to the nurse, and then it's like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. And I'm like, well, thanks.
And that's true because in the years that I've been doing this show, one of the hot spots consistently is old hospitals. Old hospitals are huge. And I guess, as I've said before, it makes sense. There's so many powerful things happening in hospitals. Life begins, life ends. People are in torment. People are in joy, welcoming new members of the family. So it's this whole soup of emotion.
Oh, and not to cut you off, I just wanted to be clear. This wasn't at the hospital. This was at a care center. So,
well, yeah.
I apologize. I didn't make that clear.
No, I think you did. But in any case, I'm speaking in general hospital settings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's a lot of activity for one person to endure. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I have more if you want me to continue on, or we can stop it here and just keep going. It just depends on what you're able to do.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and
okay, sweet. So after that, I did some home care and hospice, and I really, what's interesting is I saw more activity in like nursing homes and care centers than I did with home care and hospice.
Oh wow, okay.
Because I haven't seen any. I didn't see any like paranormal activity in like with home care and hospice. So I don't know if it was just because maybe they had their house cleansed, or they may be working on a higher vibrational level. I don't know, but
sure.
And nonetheless, I thought that was just kind of an interesting little side note or sidebar, at least, to go on with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next nursing home I worked at, I remember working some night shifts, but I didn't see any paranormal activity. But a lot of the residents and a lot of the patients would talk about seeing these two kids who would go around and be giggling and stuff. So I don't know, and I don't know if they were actual kids or maybe entities pretending to be kids, but who knows?
Right.
All right. So from there, I worked at a couple other nursing homes and care centers. I really didn't have many paranormal experiences until I came to the last care center that I worked at. It was in assisted living. I'd never really worked at assisted living, but I figured I'd give it a shot. I was getting pretty burnt out by this point. At this point, I'd been a CNA for over 15 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long run.
And so I was just really just tired of the CNA, and the CNA type of thing. So I thought, well, maybe if I do something different, like in a completely different environment, I could kind of maybe switch things up a little bit. So I ended up working at this assisted living, worked there for a while. Things were great the first year. Into the second year, had kind of had a little bit of a falling out with one of the staff members, and so in order to like save face with everything going on, they offered me a position to work nights, and I ended up working nights in their memory care unit. And I also worked some nights on so the memory care unit, which was the assisted living, more assisted living, and then of course they had like the generalized assisted living where when they patients and people who lived there didn't need that much assistance. So I was kind of familiar with both sides of the facility. And one thing I know that happened when I worked at nights when I was outside on the outside was that about I don't know what time it was, but it was during the night that you would hear someone running across the hallway upstairs because it was a bi-level facility.
Oh, okay.
And it would happen every night. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to catch this person. I'm going to catch whatever's going on. And so they have multiple stairways going up there. So I figure what I'll do is when I hear the person running, I'll run up the stairs on the other end and then see who's running across the hallway.
Right. Okay.
And so I hear the running across the hallway. I run up the stairs. No one's there. Absolutely no one's there. And then the running stopped by the time I got up there.
Oh, jeez. That's so creepy.
And so I'm like, okay. And then there were multiple occasions when I worked in just a memory care unit that doors would open by themselves. Doors would open a lot by themselves. Like we'd have to go through and do a round, and we would make sure all the doors were closed, and then we would go back to check on people during those rounds, or even in empty rooms, the doors would be open.
Jeez. Wow.
And sometimes I would close the door and then I would walk away and then I could hear the door open by itself as I was walking away.
So it was really that quick, right? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
There's something about you and night shifts doesn't work very well, does it?
Oh, I've long since given up the night shifts. Actually, the following job I had, I went to days and I absolutely loved it. And then shortly after that, I ended up working in like a medical offices. And now I'm off working for the government. So,
oh, okay. Well, you'd mentioned before about people seeing 2 children, and I was going to mention as well that that's very common in nursing homes that I've covered on the show and other care facilities, basically end-of-life facilities. And there's a common thread of children's spirits. And one suggested that the children's spirits were primarily seen right before someone was going to pass. And, it makes me wonder if that's consistent or if that was only in that one instance. But it does, is it a foreboding or an omen or a harbinger of some kind? Or are there just little spirits running around and these people at the end of their lives are able to see them more clearly?
I don't know, but I know that and I mean, not to sound callous, but I've seen a lot of people die. I've seen a lot of people kind of on their last, on their last legs, so to speak.
Sure.
And you know what? Sometimes they're just talking to people.
Right.
They're just talking to people that you can't see. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of came to the understanding that, you know what? They're probably they could either be making amends, they could be maybe, just, they're just wanting to get everything ready to make that next final step to wherever that might be, whether you're going to the hereafter or wherever.
Right. Yep. Sometimes I think their loved ones show up to bring them home. Yeah. I mean, those are all very possible. And of course, we don't know because we can't see and experience those things through their eyes. But I think it's a beautiful and comforting thought that, perhaps our loved ones do come to bring us home when it's time. So what a beautiful thought,
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Tony, you've had some incredible experiences. And again, I'm really grateful that you came on the show to share them with not only me, but our listeners. I'm sure many of the people out there listening are going to.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again.
I get emails
so much for all your love and support, and
share their stories and
follow the Paranormal Portal. Probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal, and you'll find links to all of our different social media.
And likewise, sir, it's been my pleasure.
Sites
thank you so
and
much
information about the shows,
not only supporting
including
shows,
our YouTube channel, which is
sharing your stories.
youtube.com/Paranormal Portal.
Yes, well, thank you for having me.
Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.